The conference room was utilitarian grey, a long metal table surrounded by 14 chairs. 11 were occupied when Overseer Primus Crim Verns entered, data slate in hand. The hololith projector cast its green light across their faces. Sub-overseers who'd proven competent enough to shoulder the Emperor's burden, but not ambitious enough to seek higher positions. They maintained the machinery that kept the Imperium fed. Verns activated the projector. Numbers materialized in toxic green streams above the table. 4 hours rest. 20-hour shifts. Overseer Secundus Dorner leaned forward, his augmetic eye glinting. Overseer, our equipment cannot sustain that output. The machine spirits would fail. 30% increase, Verns said. Immediate implementation. Segmentum command, verified encryption, departmento seal, no appeals process. The Medicae coordinator, Overseer Tertius Harvin, spoke quietly. The workers are already at maximum sustainable load. This will kill people. Not might, will. I've reviewed the actuarial tables. The data slate was heavy in Verns' hands, 40 years of service, and the numbers still wouldn't add up. 17 million metric tons annually. We need 22.1. To achieve this, reduce rest cycles to 4 hours, increase stim rations by 40%, defer all non-critical maintenance, reassign all light-duty workers, including elderly and adolescents, reduce caloric intake by 15%. Overseer Oral spread his hands. The math doesn't work. We need more resources. The tithe makes no provision. If we fail, Verns interrupted, we're executed for dereliction. The world is designated as failing. Punitive measures. Future tithes increased permanently. We choose between killing some now or more later. Dorner stood, chair scraping. If we defer maintenance, one harvester breakdown costs us more production than we gain. Risk noted. We have no other options. Verns looked at each of them. I'm not asking approval. These measures go into effect at dawn. Prepare your subordinates. Explain the necessity. Maintain morale. Meet your quotas. Silence, heavy with unspoken arguments edging toward sedition. The Emperor protects, Verns said. The Emperor protects, they echoed. After they left, Verns sat in darkness, the hololith's green glow like poison on his skin. His grandfather had pioneered techniques that increased yields 23%. His father had streamlined processing, reduced waste. Good administrators. Faithful servants who made things incrementally better. And he was about to make things worse, not from cruelty or incompetence, because the Imperium demanded it, and the Imperium did not negotiate. The work would begin at dawn. Mara Helix woke at the 4th hour. 56 years old, body ancient from the work. In the other cot, her grandson Connor slept. 14 years old, newly assigned to harvest teams, still believing hard work and faith would be rewarded. The alarm klaxons wailed, signaling the start of the day. They dressed in grey coveralls that never came clean, joined hundreds moving through the hab block. Breakfast in the communal refectory, nutritional paste synthesized from grain waste. Wet cardboard that kept them alive. Halfway through their meal, Overseer Tertius appeared on the raised platform. Workers quieted. New production protocols effective immediately. Rest cycles reduced to 4 hours. Work shifts extended to 20 hours. Stim rations increased. All light-duty workers reassigned to processing facilities. The Emperor requires our sacrifice. Shocked silence. Mara felt it like a blow. 4 hours rest. She'd survived 18-hour shifts by sleeping every moment she wasn't working. 4 hours was barely enough to sleep. Beside her, Connor's face was confused. Grandmother, how can we? You do what you must. Her voice was flat, but something hardened in her chest. A cold knot of anger. 47 years she'd given these fields. Buried her husband, killed by a harvester at 41. Buried her daughter, dead in childbirth from understaffed Medicae. Watched her son-in-law work himself into a heart attack at 39. And now they wanted to grind him down before he'd even lived. She looked at his smooth, uncalloused hands. By harvest's end, they'd be scarred and bleeding. By year's end, if he survived, he'd be as hollow-eyed as the rest. They boarded the transport crawler, 40 minutes to the far fields. Mara tried to doze, but the numbers circled like predators. 4 hours, 20-hour shifts. At Harvest Section 12, Mara was assigned Harvester Team 7. Connor would clear chaff, keeping intake ports free of debris. Stay close to the harvester, she told him. Other machines can't see you. Stay alert. If you feel tired, I'll get you stims. The harvester groaned to life, blade arms cutting through amber grain. Mara operated the control station by muscle memory, scarred hands moving across ancient panels. Outside, Connor ran with his clearing hook, pulling away stalks that threatened to jam the machinery. Hour 8. She took her first stim dose from the injector. The needle punched through the worn fabric at her collar, finding the implant port in her neck, cold metal kiss against skin, slick with sweat and grain dust. Then the chemical rush. Ice water in her veins, neurons firing in artificial symphony, exhaustion not gone but suddenly irrelevant. Her pupils dilated. The world sharpened to painful clarity, every scratch on the control panel visible, every sound of the harvester's grinding gears distinct and separate. The debt was immediate. Her heart hammered a rhythmic, muscles tensed against phantom threats, saliva dried to paste in her mouth. But her hands were steady on the controls. That was all that mattered. By hour 12, Connor was stumbling, tripping over his feet. "Take this." She offered the injector during a brief pause. He stared at it. Scholar told us stims were dangerous. Less dangerous than falling into the harvester. Small dose. He pressed it to his neck, flinching. His pupils dilated. False energy flooded through him. He straightened, shook his head, went back to work. Mara knew the cost. Every dose was debt. The body would demand payment, always higher than the loan. Hour 15. Her hands shook on the controls. Hour 17. Third stim dose, knowing it was poison. Hour 20. The shift ended. She climbed down on legs that barely held. Connor lay unconscious on the ground. Not dead, she checked, but collapsed from exhaustion and stim crash. Other workers helped carry him to the crawler. Around them, other teams loaded their own casualties. 12 workers down, none dead, but severe exhaustion would affect their workload. Mara half-carried Connor to their room. 4 hours until the next shift. She set her chronometer, lay down too exhausted to remove her coveralls. She didn't dream, simply ceased to exist for a brief mercy. Then the klaxons screamed, and it was time to return to the fields. Day 23. Harvester 7 broke down. Catastrophic drive failure, blocking 3 harvest rows. Verns pulled his Vox unit. "Dorna, I need it operational within 48 hours. Overseer, we've already stripped parts from Harvester 3. There are no spares. Requisitioning takes weeks. Cannibalize 3 entirely. Get 7 running." A long pause. "This is unsustainable. We're one major breakdown from cascading failures." "Do what you must." Day 37. Injury rate up 47%. Medicaid facility overcapacity by 60%. Stim consumption exceeding projections by 30%. Mortality rate up 23%. Production up only 18%. Verns walked processing facility Epsilon 4 at night. Couldn't sleep anymore. The air inside was a physical thing. Grain dust thick enough to coat his lungs with every breath. The sweet-trot smell of processed biomass, machine oil, and beneath it all the copper penny scent of blood from 1,000 small injuries. The night shift moved like automatons, sorting grain, eyes glazed with stim and exhaustion, movements mechanical. At one station, an old woman sat bleeding, hands moving through grain. Easily 70, too old for heavy-duty work, instead assigned to light duty, sitting 20 hours, sorting endlessly. Her fingers were raw from constant contact with grain husks, small cuts that never healed. Blood spotted the grain she sorted. She didn't pause to tend the wounds. Standard practice. Blood was acceptable contamination if the alternative was stopping work. She looked up, met his eyes. No accusation. Just empty acceptance. Vern's data slate chirped. Harvester 7 down again. He moved on, grain dust settling on his shoulders like ash. Day 49. A boy named Kellen collapsed in Section 12. 16 years old, running between harvester rows. One moment running, the next moment gone, face down in the grain. Mara screamed for a halt. Workers turned him over. His eyes were open, unseeing, chest not moving. Someone shouted for a Medicae, but Kellen was dead. Exhaustion-induced cardiac failure, simple collapse of a body pushed beyond endurance. They wrapped him in a tarp. The work continued. No time for grief. The harvest wouldn't wait. His team was down one worker, but the quota remained the same. That evening, Connor sat staring at nothing. First corpse, first confrontation with reality. "Why did Kellen die?" he asked finally. "The work killed him. But we're supposed to serve. The priests say it's holy. The emperor demands it. All true. Then why does it feel wrong?" Mara looked at her grandson, 14 years old, becoming a man too quickly. She'd stayed silent 47 years, accepting her fate. But she was old now, and Connor was young. Because sometimes what we're told is necessary isn't possible. She kept her voice low. Sometimes the Imperium demands more than we can give. The system doesn't see people, just numbers. And sometimes suffering is just suffering. The meaning we give it is the only meaning there is. That sounds like doubt. Someone might hear. We're alone. I'm not saying refuse to work. I'm saying acknowledge the truth privately. We're being worked to death. The quotas are impossible. We're not failing because we're weak or unfaithful. The math doesn't work. What do we do? Survive, help each other, don't take all the stims they offer, rest when we can, look out for one another. Small acts. Nothing that could be called heresy, just humanity preserved. Connor nodded slowly. I understand. Good, sleep. We have another shift in 3 hours. Day 73. Vern stood at the observation platform. The numbers spelled his doom. 92% projected final production. 8% short. 18 workers dead last week alone. Medicae beyond capacity. Remaining workers so exhausted that productivity was actually declining. They'd done everything possible. Pushed workers to breaking. Run machines until they failed. Deferred maintenance, increased stims, cut rations, extended shifts. Still not enough. 8% short. Failure. 2 million tons of grain. To produce that in 17 days would require equipment they didn't have or workers already dead. He could falsify records, adjust manifests, create phantom deliveries, alter inventories. If he was careful, he might hide the shortfall for months. But Adept Secundus Thane was still on-world, completing her audit. She'd detect falsification. And falsification was heresy, execution, punitive measures against the entire world. The people he tried to protect would suffer more. Falsification wasn't an option, which left admitting failure, submitting accurate records, facing consequences. Execution. The world designated as failing. Future tithes increased. The people ground down further until nothing remained but dust and corpses, footsteps behind him. Dorner climbed to the platform. We need to talk, privately. He closed the door. I've gathered the sub-overseers. We know the numbers. We know what's coming. We've discussed options. We report the shortfall, but we document everything. Every injury, death, equipment failure, deferred maintenance cycle. Undeniable record of why the quota couldn't be met. Send it up the chain with the official assessment. Make them see what they've done. That won't save us. But we'll die having told the truth. Records intact, evidence clear. Maybe somewhere in the Imperium's machinery, someone will see those records. Realize the quotas were impossible. Save future zones. Verns looked at this man who'd spent 30 years maintaining harvest equipment, worked himself nearly to death, keeping impossible machines running. You're suggesting we document our own failure, create a record guaranteeing our executions. Do our duty one final time. Accurate records, properly filed, submitted through proper channels. What we've always done. We can't meet the physical quota, but we can meet every other standard. If we die as faithful servants, not corrupt officials. There was appeal in it. They couldn't win, couldn't meet the quota, couldn't save themselves. But they could preserve the truth, ensure their failure was documented, quantified, explained. Who else agreed to this? All 11 sub-overseers. We met last night. This will get all of you executed alongside me. We'd rather die for truth than lies. Dorner paused. One more thing. Workers want to speak with you. They have a proposal. What proposal? Conference room Primus. They asked me to bring you. In the conference room waited Harvin, Oral, and 3 harvest team workers. One was an older woman with scarred hands and a face that had seen decades of suffering. "Overseer Primaris," the woman said. "I'm Mara Helix, Team 7. We asked to speak." Verns sat. "We know the quotas. Workers aren't stupid. We can do math. We're falling short. We know what that means for you and us. Future tithes increased, punitive measures more suffering. I'm doing everything. You're killing us." Not angry, stating fact. 16 people dead last month. Twice the normal mortality. We still can't meet the quota because the quota is impossible. I don't have a choice. We think you do. For the final 16 days, reduce shifts to something sustainable. 12 hours, 6 hours rest, proper stim protocols. We'll work hard, not unto death. Whatever we produce is what we produce. It's all we have left. Verns stared. "You're proposing I intentionally reduce production, deliberately fail the quota." "We're proposing you let us survive. The quota is already impossible. Even if we work ourselves to death 16 more days, we'll still fall short. The suffering isn't achieving anything, it's just suffering. We're asking you to stop. Let us work at a pace that might let us live. We'll face the consequences together." "You're asking me to give up. We're asking you to choose us over the numbers." Harvin nodded. "The workers are right, Crim. Additional suffering isn't producing results. We are past the point of diminishing returns. Sustainable shifts might actually maintain production rather than losing more workers and machines. The Administratum will see it as dereliction." "They'll execute us anyway," Dorna said quietly. "At least this way, we don't watch more people die for nothing." Something broke inside Verns. Some last barrier between administrator and human. All his years of faithful service, following every regulation, meeting every quota, sacrificing conscience for the greater good. It had led here where the only moral choice was to deliberately fail his duty. "If I do this, we're all complicit," willful defiance. "It's survival," Mara said. "We're not rebels, not refusing to work. Just asking to work at a pace that might let us see next year. Is that too much?" Verns looked around the table. Overseers and workers asking him to value human life over imperial quotas, asking him to be something the Imperium couldn't tolerate, being merciful. "Give me some time to think." "We have 16 days, Mara said. "How long do you need?" "Tomorrow. I'll have an answer." That night, Verns couldn't return to his quarters. His feet carried him through the facilities as if seeking absolution in the machinery itself. The processing plant, the equipment yards, the Medicae center where exhausted staff tended broken bodies. Every space bore witness to his failure, not the failure to meet quotas, but the failure to see this path sooner. He ended at the far edge of Harvest Section 11, where the grain fields stretched to the horizon under the light of the world's moons. The wind moved through amber stalks in waves, endless and indifferent, beautiful in its way. His father and grandfather had stood in these fields, and now he stood at the edge of the same fields, contemplating the one thing his forebears never had, the deliberate choice to fail, not because he was corrupt, not because he was incompetent, but because the alternative was watching people die for numbers that wouldn't add up regardless. His data slate chirped. A message from Dorna, Harvester 9's main drive showing stress fractures. Estimate 48 hours before catastrophic failure. No parts available. Request guidance. Verns stared at the message. Once, he would have ordered Dorna to keep it running, damn the risks, push everything to breaking because the quota demanded it. The old Verns, the loyal administrator, the faithful servant, would have calculated acceptable losses and made the cold choice. But the old Verns had built this nightmare one reasonable decision at a time. He thought about Mara Helix's scarred hands, about young Connor, 14 years old with stim-shocked eyes, learning that faith and hard work guaranteed only more suffering. About Kellen, 16, who died running between harvester rows because the numbers demanded it. 17 people died last month, about an 8% shortfall that wouldn't change no matter how many more died. His fingers moved across the data slate, composing a response. Stand down Harvester 9 immediately. Implement standard maintenance protocols. No heroic measures. We preserve what we can. He sent it before he could reconsider. Then he opened a new document. His hands were shaking, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of what he was about to do. 40 years of conditioning screamed at him to stop, to recalculate, to find another way. But there was no other way. There never had been. He began typing. To all sub-overseers, Harvest Zone Epsilon 7. From Overseer Primaris Crim Verns. Protocol Amendment, Immediate Implementation. Effective dawn cycle, the following measures are enacted. Work shifts reduced to 12 hours. Rest cycles increased to 6 hours. Stim rations returned to baseline therapeutic levels only. All deferred maintenance to be addressed on priority schedule. Workers currently in medical care will remain until cleared by Medicaid staff, not production needs. Production targets are suspended. New directive, sustainable operations focused on long-term workforce and equipment preservation. His finger hovered over the transmit key. This was it. The moment where he stopped being the administrator the Imperium wanted and became something else. Something that might get him executed, that would certainly mark him as having failed, that would end his career and probably his life. But it might save the people in his care. It might give Connor a chance to reach 15. It might let Mara Helix rest for 6 hours instead of 4. It might preserve their humanity in a system designed to grind it away. He pressed transmit. The responses came quickly. Acknowledgement from all 11 sub-overseers. Then, after a pause from Dorna, well done, Crim. Whatever comes next, we face it together. From Harvin, I'll inform Medicaid staff immediately. This will save lives. From Oral, the workers will be grateful. We'll make the most of what time we have. Verns sat in the darkness at the field's edge, data slate cold in his hands, and felt the weight lift, not entirely, but enough to breathe. He'd made his choice, not the easy one, not the one that would save his career, but the one he could live within the time he had left. In his office, one more task remained. Adept Secundus Thane waited, as if she'd known he'd come tonight. My audit is complete, she said without preamble. Report filed in 2 days. Your findings. You're an excellent administrator overseeing an impossible situation. Records impeccable. Management efficient and loyal. You'll fail the tithe by 8% due to infrastructure inadequacy and unrealistic quota assessment. You're reporting it as the Imperium's failure. I'm reporting the truth. 17 audits this year. 14 worlds experiencing similar shortfalls. The pattern indicates extensive miscalculation. I'm recommending a sector-wide tithe adjustment and comprehensive review of assessment protocols. That report could end you. I've signed enough execution orders for competent people. She adjusted her collar, fingers precise. Something has to change. I'm implementing a new protocol tomorrow. Reduced shifts, sustainable pace. We'll produce what we can, nothing more. Good decision, Overseer. I'll note in my report you implemented corrective measures to preserve workforce viability for future production cycles. She paused. For what it's worth, I've seen 3 other overseers make similar choices this audit cycle. None in time to prevent the worst casualties, but still, the pattern is there if anyone bothers to look. What happened to them? Awaiting tribunal, 2 definitely facing execution. 1 might survive with permanent censure. She met his eyes. The Imperium grinds slowly, but it grinds thoroughly. What you've done here will be noted, Overseer. Whether as precedent or cautionary tale remains to be seen. Thank you for the honesty, Adept Secundus. Thank yourself. You're choosing humanity over bureaucracy. That takes more courage than following orders. She left. Verns sat alone, the weight of judgment to come settling on his shoulders. But for tonight, he'd made his choice. He'd sleep not knowing if it would save him, but knowing he'd stopped adding to the body count. That would have to be enough. Dawn arrived cool and clear. When the alarm klaxons wailed, Mara woke to find the schedule changed on her personal data slate. 12 hours, 6 hours rest, standard stim protocols. She stared at it, afraid to believe. Connor stirred. What is it? The shifts, they changed them back. Why would they? His eyes widened. The Overseer, he did it. They dressed quickly, joined the flow of workers toward the refectories. The change had spread through the hab blocks faster than official announcements ever could. People moved differently, still tired, still worn, but with something new in their posture. Not quite hope, but the absence of absolute despair was close enough. At the transport crawler, workers gathered in knots, speaking in low voices. Mara overheard fragments. Won't last, they'll change it back. Heard the overseers going to be executed. Doesn't matter. For now, we can breathe. The crawler took them to Section 7. Mara found the harvester team already assembled, her control station. Connor's clearing position. But something was different. A new face among them, a boy no older than 12, small for his age, eyes wide with terror. His name was Jace. First day on harvest duty, assigned to chaff clearing alongside Connor. Mara watched as Connor approached him, saw her grandson's face, no longer the confused child of the previous months, but not yet the hollow-eyed veteran either. Something in between, someone learning to survive. First day, Connor asked. Jace nodded, mute with fear. I'll show you what to do. Connor's voice was gentle, but carried weight. Stay close to the harvester, but not too close. Watch the blade arms. They extend further than you think. Keep the intake clear, but don't reach in while it's moving. Never ever. What about when I get tired? Jace's voice was barely a whisper. Connor glanced at Mara, something passing between them, then back to the boy. You'll get tired. Everyone does. But we have 6 hours rest now, not 4. That helps. And you take stims only if you really need them, small doses. Your body isn't a machine. You have to last years, not just weeks. How do you know what's a small dose? Asked the older workers. Like my grandmother, Connor gestured to Mara. She'll tell you true. The overseers will give you whatever you ask for, but that doesn't mean you should take it. Understand? Jace nodded slowly. And one more thing. Connor's voice dropped lower. We look out for each other. That's how we survive. The harvester groaned to life. Mara took her position at the controls, muscle memory guiding her hands. Connor and Jace clearing chaff from the intakes. The grain fell in golden waves. The silos would never be full enough, but they would be full enough for today. The work continued. Sustainable now, still hard, still dangerous, but survivable. By hour 6, Mara noticed she wasn't reaching for the stim injector. By hour 9, Connor was still moving with energy, not the desperate borrowed alertness of chemical debt. By hour 12, when the shift ended, Jace climbed into the crawler exhausted but not broken, eyes still holding something beyond empty acceptance. In the fields, workers gathered equipment, secured harvesters, prepared for tomorrow. Someone began singing, one of the old harvest songs, the ones Mara's grandmother had taught her. Others joined, voices rough but sincere. The overseers heard and did not forbid it. As the crawler carried them back toward the hab blocks, Mara looked out over the amber fields. Somewhere in the administrative complex, Overseer Verns was compiling reports that would likely condemn him. Somewhere in the Administratum's infinite bureaucracy, those reports would be filed, reviewed, possibly acted upon, or possibly forgotten. The work would continue. The tithe would still be gathered. The Imperium would grind on, vast and uncaring, demanding everything from uncounted billions. But in Harvest Zone Epsilon 7, for now, people survived. They worked hard. They followed rules. They failed to meet the quota, but they also rested 6 hours instead of 4. Took stims only when necessary. Taught the young ones what they needed to know. Sang songs in the fields, looked after one another. The final 16 days proceeded at the sustainable pace. Workers still tired, still worn, but not collapsing. No stim overdoses. The deferred maintenance was addressed. Harvester 9 saved before catastrophic failure. Harvester 3 slowly rebuilt from cannibalized parts. Hard work but survivable. On the final day, the last containers lifted to orbit. The official tally was computed, verified, transmitted. 92% of required tithe, 8% short. Verns submitted his final report alongside Thane's audit findings. Production totals, equipment failures, worker casualties, impossible quotas, his decisions. He attached documentation from all 11 sub-overseers. Filed everything according to proper Imperial protocol in triplicate with correct authentication codes. Then he waited for judgment. 3 days later, the first response came. Not an execution order, a notification that his case was under review pending tribunal. Estimated duration, 6 to 18 months. He was to continue normal duties until called to account. The same notification went to his sub-overseers. "They're taking their time," Dorner said when they gathered to discuss it. "That's either very good or very bad." "At least we're still breathing," Harvin observed. Weeks passed. Harvest season ended, planting began. New tithe requirements arrived. Other zones weren't so fortunate. Verns received word that Harvest Zone Gamma 3 had been designated failing after a similar shortfall. Their overseer executed. Tithes increased by 20%. The new overseer's name was in the reports, a hardliner known for meeting quotas through ruthless enforcement. "We might have bought ourselves time," Oral said, reviewing the data, "but we might also have painted targets on our backs." Verns walked the facilities at night, as had become his habit. Watched workers moving at sustainable pace. Saw Connor teaching other young workers the small wisdoms his grandmother had passed down. Saw Mara at a harvester station, hands still scarred but no longer bleeding constantly. Saw people surviving. In his office, reports from other worlds filtered through the Administratum's vast network. Some spoke of quota adjustments, others of increased enforcement. The pattern Thane had identified was real, but the Imperium's response remained unclear. Some worlds received relief, others received tribunals and executions. The machine ground on, vast and uncaring, each world a single data point in calculations beyond human comprehension. Verns compiled his reports, maintained standards, waited for judgment. The summons would come eventually, tribunal, execution, or perhaps some third outcome he couldn't foresee. But for now, in the time he'd bought with his choice, his people survived. It wasn't victory. The system remained unchanged. The Imperium's demands would continue, relentless and often impossible. Other worlds would face the same choice he had, and many overseers would make different decisions. The pattern might lead to reform, or it might lead to harsher enforcement. He would likely never know. But in Harvest Zone Epsilon 7, people worked hard and rested enough. They met what quotas they could and survived the ones they couldn't. And in the grim darkness, even that fragile mercy mattered.